Yo, what is up guys, Ghost here, welcome back to another video, and in this one, I want to talk about some things that I think Battlefield 6 can improve upon. So the game has been out for around a week and a half right now, and whilst I think it's a really successful game, it's been a lot of fun playing it, it is far from a perfect Battlefield experience, and so I thought it might be a good idea if we maybe collectively jot down a few things that we'd like to see DICE change about the game. Some of them from me are going to be on the design side of the game, but some of them are also going to be small little bugs and things that could easily be improved at really no detriment to the game at all. So, as always, if you guys enjoy the content here on the channel, don't forget to hit that sub button to stay up to date with everything Battlefield 6, and as always guys, thank you so much for the support, really appreciate it. Okay, so the first one for me is maybe going to be somewhat controversial, and it's going to be maps and the pacing of the game. Now, I think this is something that a lot of people really enjoy. I can see online though that a lot of people aren't too keen on it. I'm sort of in the middle. I do enjoy Battlefield 6's maps, but at the same time, they don't really feel quite as large as Battlefield maps of old that I am personally used to. And I kind of get the reason that DICE went in this direction. They want to cater to as wide an audience as they possibly can. So they want some bigger maps for the old Battlefield people. They also want smaller maps, and you can see they've also put a lot of smaller game modes in. We've just heard recently about Season 1, that is going to have a 4 versus 4 game mode. It's also going to have an 8 versus 8 game mode, and I kind of feel like those are more in the game to cater to people who are maybe coming in who are new. Maybe they've played other shooters such as Call of Duty and etc., and those are the sizes of game modes that they used to. But I sort of feel like it's predominantly those sizes of maps and those sizes of game modes at the moment. Of course, yes, we have Conquest, we have Breakthrough, but I would like to see DICE put a little bit more emphasis going forward with future seasons on making things just bigger, bolder, more sort of bombastic, more Battlefield really. And I think another thing that really ties into this is the pacing of the game. The pacing of Battlefield 6 is really incredibly fast. You don't get a lot of time to breathe, so much so that, and this may be me just showing my age, once I've been playing for maybe 2 or 3 hours, I have to really just stand up and take a break. You know, I can tell playing other games, for example, I've recently been playing some Ark Raiders. In that game, you have a lot of room to breathe. There is some downtime between fights, and so I can sort of sit down hours on end and not really get burnt out, but like all of my nerves are just fried from playing Battlefield 6 for a couple of hours, and I don't know, maybe it's partially nostalgia speaking here, but I don't really ever remember feeling like that in any of the older Battlefield titles. So I think, again, having some bigger maps with a little bit more space between objectives, so you have to spend a little bit of time running where you're not getting shot from snipers, you're not having to look around you from, 50 different angles at once. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing to have the player essentially doing nothing, just running. We don't want Battlefield 2042's problem where it was just like a running simulator and all of the maps were like barren wastelands with little to no cover in between. But, I think they need to find a good in-between there. So that, I think, would definitely be number one. As I say, I am still having a lot of fun, I'm enjoying the maps, but I do miss something about the old Battlefield map vibe. Alright, next, let's talk about a mechanic in the game that I'm really not a fan of, and I think this is going to be another controversial one, and it is the sniper sweet spot mechanic. Now, for those of you who aren't aware what this is, basically, if you body shot somebody with a sniper rifle between certain ranges, and that range can vary depending on the sniper rifle that you're using, so let's just say it's 50 to 100 meters, you will actually one-shot them when you hit them in the chest. But if you're below 50 meters or above 50 meters, you're not going to one-shot them. You're going to do maybe like 60 to 80 damage or something. In almost every Battlefield game, in fact every game outside of Battlefield 1, the way sniping has worked is that headshots are only the one-shot kills. Body shots anywhere else in the body except the head is not going to be a one-shot. Now, I've been killed by this mechanic a lot, and it just doesn't feel very fair. Most of the time, I assume that I've been headshot, but then when I go and look at the kill card, I was actually not headshot, so he must have killed me via the sweet spot mechanic. I also think it doesn't really convey this to the sniper. Like, most people probably don't even know about this. They have no idea why at some random arbitrary ranges they're getting one-shot kills in the chest, and then, you know, below those ranges or above those ranges, all of a sudden they're just getting, you know, hit markers and not getting kills. They probably assume that the target they're shooting at has already been damaged, and that's why they're getting a one-shot kill. And in my opinion, it just doesn't really offer a lot of readability to the situation, either for the sniper or for the person defending. I also think it just takes a lot of the fun skill out of sniping, and, you know, I'm going to tag this one in there, but the rangefinder in Battlefield 6, being able to just press a button, and if you're not aware, you can do that with a rangefinder. You press a button, and it will dial in the exact range to your target, and then you can just click on their head and get a headshot every single time. I feel like that is also going a little bit too far in making sniping really, really noob friendly. I remember coming into Battlefield years back and seeing the realistic bullet trajectories, the fact that you had to account for bullet drop, you had to account for the bullet travel time. Those were like mechanics and things that I had never seen in any first-person shooter before, and I was blown away, and that is really what drew me into the Battlefield series. And so to see them dumbing those mechanics down now for the masses is a little bit of a shame, I think, and I personally think they should go back to the drawing board with that one. But as always, let me know what you guys think about it down in the comments. Now, speaking of classes, I think it's fair to say that possibly the weakest link this time around is the Assault class. And I think it's fair to say that they're maybe the only class in the game that are sort of surplus to requirement, right? You need engineers to repair vehicles and take out enemy vehicles. You need the support class to help, you know, revive people and restock your ammo and your health. And you kind of need recon as well, because their spotting abilities are so powerful, and spotting is incredibly useful in Battlefield 6 because the visibility isn't great. And then we have the Assault class, and when I think about their kit, they just don't really have a lot going for them. They have gotten the spawn beacon, so maybe this is going to change once people actually get the spawn beacon unlocked there, but so far I haven't really seen many people using it. They've also got one of the new gadgets, the Assault Ladder, which I do think is a really cool gadget and can be certainly very useful getting up to some advantageous positions, but I'm not sure that is really adding enough value to the class. I think overall their intrinsic gadget that they get, which is the Injector, has to be like one of the shittiest gadgets in the entire game. I don't know, I inject myself with it, and it's like nothing happened. I'm like, what is happening here? Like, it's supposed to increase your run speed, it's supposed to make it so you can sense people, like, I don't know, hear their footsteps a little bit louder. Like, if you guys think I'm out of line here, let me know, but that is my experience of the Adrenaline Injector for the Assault class. It just doesn't really have an effect on my gameplay, so much so that most of the time I just don't even use it. So I think with that gadget specifically, they need to go back to the drawing board. A lot of people would like to see them give the healing to the Assault class and keep the ammo on the Support class. Personally, I think Assault was kind of a little bit overpowered in Battlefield 4 because it had the healing and it also had the revives. So maybe if Support had like revives and ammo and then health was on the Assault class, I guess that could work. But either way, they're going to have to figure out a way of adding a little bit more value to it. Okay, next up, let's run through a few just really annoying bugs that it is incredibly important that DICE fix ASAP. So first of all, Portal server capacity. If you guys have ever tried to host your own Portal server, it'll come up with this error almost every time, and the only way to circumvent this is basically just to wait. You just have to sit there spamming the host button, and eventually, once a server slot opens up, you might be able to host your own. Now, we were promised on day one that each and every one of us would be able to host our own persistent server, and clearly that is not the case. They have already tried to alleviate some of the XP farm servers that are kind of clogging up the server capacity there, and they've done that by nerfing the amount of experience you get from them, so that should now mean that more of us can host servers. But personally for me, I still find I can't most of the time. So I don't know what EA really have to do to make this work, but we had the exact same issue in Battlefield 2042. So the fact they still haven't solved this problem in Battlefield 6, it is a bit worrying. I know they're working on it, but this fix cannot come sooner. Another one I really think they need to look into, and I've mentioned this in videos before, but that is jets getting laser painted and then locked on by the MR missile on the IFVs. So basically what this does is you laser paint the jet, and you can do this solo, by the way. You can hop in the gunner seat, laser paint a jet or a helicopter, jump back in the driver's seat, switch to the MR missile, lock onto the painted target and fire it, and even if the target flares, they will get hit by the missile no matter what. They also don't receive any warning whatsoever that a missile is incoming. This was kind of the same in Battlefield 4, where you could paint a target and then use a guided shell, and a lot of people have pointed this out, but a couple of reasons that this wasn't anywhere near as OP is that, first of all, in Battlefield 4, you had ECM, and this allowed you to get rid of the laser on you for a good amount of seconds. The flares in Battlefield 6 only last for a second or so, and then the laser painter is back again. And second of all, when you used to laze targets in Battlefield 4 and older Battlefield games, you had to keep the target in your line of sight the entire time. As soon as you stopped doing that, they weren't painted anymore. In Battlefield 6, you can just paint them, and they stay painted for like 10-15 seconds. So again, you can solo this, and in my opinion, it's just far too overpowered. The next thing on my list would be auto exposure for going inside and outside of buildings. So if you've ever been inside a building, you run out of the doorway, you jump out of the window, and you feel like you've just been flashbanged in the face. The game has this weird sort of filter on it where it's almost like the soldier's camera is reacting like a real life camera, and the exposure is overcompensating when you go from a dark area to a very bright area. Now, some people would say this is realistic, but I would say, if you have human eyes, and I would certainly hope that you do, and you've ever been inside a building for like 2 seconds and then you walk outside, you're not blinded, right? I mean, sure, it's different if you've been sat in the cinema for 2 hours in complete darkness, but we're running in and out of houses here very quickly in Battlefield 6, so this effect isn't very realistic at all, and I really think DICE need to massively tone this down. The next thing I would like to see is a proper test range. I know people have made their own test ranges in Portal, and that's really great to see, but I still think it's a bit of an easy cop-out for the Battlefield studios and for EA to just rely on players to create their own experiences instead of them making a test range of their own, where you can fly vehicles, you can actually like run around a map, you know, you can shoot against proper targets that aren't just like cut out pieces of cardboard. To me, that's just like a bare minimum in a Battlefield game, and it doesn't exist in Battlefield 6 right now. Now, matchmaking search is another area I think that they could improve on as well. Much of the time, if you search for a specific map, it doesn't really matter what game mode it is. A lot of the time, you don't find that map. Now, I'm all for sitting there in a queue, you know, matchmaking for maybe 30 seconds to a minute if I can successfully get on the map that I want to play on. But a lot of the time, you will matchmake and say, okay, I want to play Mirak Valley. And what happens is it instantly finds you a game, but on the wrong map. So I don't know if this is like intended behavior, maybe the matchmaking search just isn't working properly and it's not matchmaking for long enough to try to search adequately to find you the map that you want. But again, DICE really need to look into this one. And while we're on the topic of things that are kind of broken, keybindings right now are also broken. I like to generally set my big map to the tab key, and when I do that, even though I unbind scoreboard from tab, every time I hit tab, it brings up both the scoreboard and the big map at the same time. And this is not just for that keybind, it's happening with a lot of keybinds. If you unbind things, the game, for whatever reason, still thinks it's bound, so they need to look into that one. And then finally here, the last area of improvement I want to talk about today is vehicle gameplay. Now again, might be a bit of a controversial take here, a bit of a hot take, but in my opinion, vehicle balance is kind of bad. Like, all of the vehicles in Battlefield 6 are crazy glass cannons, and I gave this feedback in the beta, and nothing has really changed. Basically, every vehicle is able to destroy every other vehicle lightning fast. Like, the cannons on the jets are crazy powerful against enemy jets and helicopters. The tanks, or the IFVs, they have tow missiles. They're really easy to use and to steer, and they one-shot helicopters. We've got the aforementioned lock-on laser-painted MR missile, which goes through flares. If you use the right tank shell, you can almost like one-shot enemy tanks and IFVs. And I think this sort of gameplay doesn't really lead to interesting vehicle versus vehicle interactions, because at the end of the day, if you're getting attacked, you want the chance to be able to turn around and retort. You want to be able to retaliate, and maybe if you're more skilled than the enemy player, you can take them out, but due to the speed at which you die, most of the time, you just don't have a chance in hell. You're just going to be dead. So I would like to see the damage of the weapons be toned down a bit. Like, I get it. I know what they're going for, right? They're vehicles. They're war vehicles. They're supposed to be powerful. But I feel like it kind of just removes the vehicle chess that existed in the game before. I also think a lot of the vehicles could do with just some general improvements. I think the tanks move too slow. The gameplay that it leads into is just very sort of boring, like you're crawling along. We had this problem in Battlefield 2042 with their tanks. They sped them up and they were a lot funner to use. I think the same problem now exists in Battlefield 6, and for whatever reason, they haven't learned from that. The jets have a lot of things wrong with them right now. There's no air radar. There is very little audible feedback when you're dogfighting, and there's also no rear view camera. And for any of you guys out there who are jet aficionados or dogfighters, you'll know that having a rear view camera is absolutely paramount to knowing when there's an enemy jet behind you. Now, there is a 360-degree camera that you can spin around, I'm aware of that, but when you use it, you can't move the jet, so you need an actual separate keybind for a rear view camera that allows you to continue to pitch up and continue dogfighting with an enemy jet whilst you're looking in that camera. I think if they improved those three things, you know, the rear view camera, the audio feedback from enemy jets buzzing past you, and also the air radar, that would make dogfighting in Battlefield 6 a lot more viable. Anybody who's played Battlefield 4 will know that, like, you got so much more feedback in that game. You could see the contrails of the enemy jet, and you really could rely on all of your senses to know where they are. Not really the case in Battlefield 6, and as I mentioned before, if somebody does get on your tail, you're going to be dead within a split second and have no chance to fight back. And then, of course, there's also no loadouts for the jets whatsoever. It's kind of weird because if you go into the loadout screen, it sort of looks like there should be loadouts there. You can see all of the equipped weapons and whatnot in all of the slots, but you can't change any of them. There are no additional options there. So I don't know if their plan is sort of to drip feed the content for the jets out. Maybe they want to put some, you know, new munitions and stuff like that in with the additional seasons that are coming for the game, and that's why they've held off on this. But I really sincerely hope they are planning to put some more stuff in there, especially with bombing really being the main gameplay, whether you're playing in the fighter jet or the attack jets. Bombing is the bread and butter. That is the gameplay loop of playing in the jets. And so to not be able to select additional bombs or any different kinds of bombs like cluster bombs, they have so many different options here. There are so many different kinds of bombs that exist in the world. The fact they haven't put any of those in the game really kind of has me scratching my head. So there you go, guys. That is my little list. I'm going to leave it at that. I don't want to go on forever. There are more things that I could speak out about. I also want to make it clear, it's not as if I'm not enjoying the game, right? I know I've done a lot of complaining in this video, but sometimes I think it's okay to have the odd video critiquing things, because that is the way we're going to get a better, more improved, more polished product. As always, if you guys disagree with me, agree with me, whatever the case may be, leave it down in the comments below and let's have a rational, thought out conversation about this. Don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed today's video, subscribe to stay up to date with everything Battlefield, and I'll see you all in the next one.